Let's move on and hit up the Hawthorn and North Melbourne game. Battle of the shit kickers, as they say. Now, this first half was definitely dominated by North Melbourne. They were exceptional in territory. They brought the pressure. They were absolutely dominating possession. So for me, yeah, and that was summed up. Luke McDonald absolutely killed it for North Melbourne. He'll get defender status in draft leagues. Some people are still looking for him in standard. The thing I have in standard is that number one, all right, he was just absolutely getting all these intercept marks. He was taking one of the smaller forwards, someone that he could beat aerially. So that way, once the ball comes in, he can try and outmark them. When the ball hits the ground, they can use him as an extraction. I thought his role was very good, probably continues to be very good, but he's not going to get that many intercept marks each week. Um, Next one, obviously, Hall will tie these guys together. Hall just kept racking up the ball, 129. He could have gone much higher. It looked like he was going 140, 150. Just kept on racking up the ball left, right, and center. Um, Again, I wonder how much of a reliance they have on him, but he just keeps running hard and seagulling, being like, yeah, hit me up, and just keep running beside them and just trying to get the ball. And I wonder how long it's going to take teams to kind of shut those sorts of players down, your Sards, your Halls, because of the way the game's being played. We know, again, after the first 4 weeks, coaches start to go, okay, well, who are the most impactful players in the game style of the team we're playing? And it's like, right, they're trying to run and carry or trying to really rebound off defense. And let's go sit someone on these players and stop them from running. And then what happens is they sit someone on there. The first 5 times they run past, there's literally someone hot on their heels, like, nah, mate, you ain't getting a fucking touch. So what do? They stop running. Because what's the point in running? If you don't get rewarded, why keep running and busting your ass to try and make yourself an option? Because you're like, oh well, I'm just going to get shut down. So and that's what I kind of expect will happen throughout the season.
Yeah, this is why I wore the blue and white shirt, mate. We got Zeeble, McDonald, and this is definitely Aaron Hall. There were times in the game where you could see in the footage he was standing next to someone going, "Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me." He just is the biggest seagull in the game and loves it. But they were playing, and this is why with the Hawks, you had Sicily 105 and Giath 118 because both teams didn't have functioning forward lines. The Hawks lost Lynch early in the game, so that was one tall done with the resting ruckman. So it all became about Lewis, who played very well. It was a really good target for the Hawks. But outside of that, the Hawks didn't really have much else happening forward in the first half for them. And then the same with North Melbourne. They were relying on Coleman Jones and Larky. Coleman Jones was fucking shit. So the halfbacks in this
Coleman
game were
Jones
just
can't play again.
he can't. He said, "Oh mate, I'm so glad we've got a future first rounder because if North can finish bottom, we'll get pick 20 for him, and I'm happy with that. I'll take that because
He
they he's
he
not a
was
good
on
player.
zero. He had one opportunity. I think it was the first quarter, or surely it wasn't the first half. But basically, he got given the ball on the wing. Someone ran up to him, and he was nearly out of bounds, and he literally just dropped the ball, and then the opponent took it and ran away from him. He didn't get a touch in the first quarter.
Yeah. So
He
this is
horrible.
this is why these points are very skewed to the backmen this week because they were playing against absolute no forward line at all, both sides, and just Hawthorn had just slightly more quality. Yeah, but you could tell this was a bottom four playing bottom four, and the like Aaron Hall's still a classy player with the ball. Like when he gets it, he can kick the ball and stuff. And it showed that's where Zeeble is experienced. So of course he was going to do that. And then as you said, Luke McDonald, there's no way he's doing that every week. And I still think he's probably even a better pickup than Lipinski because he's going to get your position. But at the same time, yeah, they're not playing Hawthorn every week. They get West Coast next week. They get their two easiest games, and I can see Hall and McDonald and Zeeble probably doing the same thing next week. And then all of a sudden they've got to start playing against proper forward lines. Um, Going on a boys' trip, we're going to watch
Don't
the North Melbourne Geelong game in Tassie, and Geelong would absolutely destroy North Melbourne's backline.
don't speak too soon. Darling might play against North Melbourne and drop plenty of chess marks, right? So there's
Mm, mm.
plenty in there for the little fella. Um, yeah, okay. So that's one thing to note. Also, yeah, West Coast this week. Now I was talking about. Let's talk about Cherry because that does sort of lead into a CCJ conversation. 208,000 Cherry. I thought he did well enough. Um, near enough. Gave away a couple of frees. Could have kicked a goal and missed it. Could have easily been a high 80 game. I think I got enough out of him to be impressed. And again, they played three talls, three ruckmen. The leading patterns and stuff like that were all over the shop. So CCJ couldn't lead to save his life. Goldie did good things, but Goldie was very impressive when they sat it on his head. wasn't like a leading tall, those leading patterns that forwards or key forwards actually have really down pat. They just go, hey, let's just throw some really tall ruckman down there and see what happens. They couldn't lead. And the only reason Goldie got success was pretty much like sit it on my head and I'll outmuscle some people or jump and catch it. And that's kind of what they had success with. And that was only very late in the game, pretty much when the game was nearly cooked. So CCJ was literally horrible. The commentators are saying it's horrible. Surely the coaching staff, because they said they're going to mix it up and see if they could play three talls or three ruckmen, CCJ being in there. And Cherry was the number one ruck. Cherry started in the ruck. Goldie played forward. Goldie kicked goals. Cherry did better at the ruck. CCJ, I think, had one centre bounce attendance or one hit out. So fuck all. He's out, right? Which
Mm,
then makes it
yep.
even better for Cherry because Cherry and Goldie will be the guys. And it's going to take quite a lot to, I think, upsettle them. CCJ, they'll probably say, hey, mate, you need to go get some form and try and get some leading patterns and get some touch because, yeah, you ain't got nothing, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, and that's you guys were talking about the audio through the week where Goldie was been practicing more his forward craft, and then
it was
I know,
evident.
and then George tweeted my tweet when I found out that Cherry had been renamed into the ruck on Sunday morning. So those who
Cheeky
follow me at
bastards.
Swizz26 on Twitter, you would have been all over that. The only thing that cost me was because I had Rochelle, I ended up trying to debate between do I want Rochelle and Ward and ended up keeping Ward instead of Rochelle, which fucked me a little bit if I just had Rochelle still up in the forward line. But I think Cherry's role going forward's so much better because they showed that he's going to be the starting ruck, and Goldie. Goldie's still great. And I saw a lot of North supporters going out there. Well, Goldie's still the best. Why aren't we putting him? Well, Cherry had the offer to go elsewhere. He's the future. North aren't playing to play finals at the moment. It's all about development. They're going to be such a good team in 2 or 3 years. And they probably need one more year down the bottom. Let these guys find their feet, continue to get games into it, and pick up another buddy first or second draft pick to add to the superstar that is Horn Francis and then Powell and Phillips and all these other guys that are coming through. And they're going to be an absolute top team. So yeah, I have a lot of faith that Cherry going forward is going to be the man. And then if he does get tired later, in, as the year goes on, as they do, or if they're coming up against your Max Gorns, yeah, Goldie will do the more the brunt that week. But I still think then Cherry just goes forward. Like Coleman Jones is not just looked terrible. So yeah, I've got a lot
I
of
agree.
faith. Yeah, and I don't think like that battle between Rochelle and Cherry. Rochelle's not going to do that every week. Kick goals where Cherry, there's hit out to advantages. There was 10 points in about a 40-second. I think I tweeted out on the Sunday where Cherry down to Horn Francis, and you'd just be, as a North supporter, you'd be so excited seeing that
It's the
because
future.
it is the future, right? That.
So the risk is this week they play probably Nick Nat. Now, not an issue for Wits because Wits is a very tall man. So always been an issue. I think his Wits has scored well against Nick Nat previously because of Wits's height. For me, it could even see Goldie maybe even taking a little bit more of the brunt on this one to start. So I'm not that concerned. But after that, Brisbane, Sydney, the Doggies, Geelong, Carlton, those five, right? I think that's definitely open for Cherry to actually score quite well. And again, that ruck forward eligibility. So in a little bit time, he'll also get that sort of ruck status. So I think that helps. And also for draft leagues as well, Goldie as a forward, I reckon he can easily get you an 80 as that ruck sort of forward sort of player. So for one, I don't mind that as well. And if an injury happens to Cherry, then Goldie's straight up and in there, probably getting you close towards 100. So for draft leagues, I quite like that as well.
Well,
Speaking
that's
of the
can
horn,
can I speak on that one, Benny? That's one of the other reasons. As much as I think English is still a watch, and I don't knock anybody that started English because I thought that was a great pick, but there's a part of me that thinks Cherry early on can get the cash. If Goldie picks up forward status on the run home, as Cherry starts to tire, yeah, he's definitely even one in standard because we know Goldie can go 100. And as a forward, you want as somebody who can go 100. So I think he's definitely one that we should be definitely watching to see if he picks up that status. And I know you're talking about Nick Nat. Yeah, as good as obviously Nick Nat is and everything like that, it's the standard Nick Nat. He played 66% on the weekend. He only goes usually 65% time on ground. So that means even if Goldie is against Nick Nat, Cherry's getting at least 35% against what Bailey
someone else.
Williams or some other, So I back Cherry in those contests.
Yeah, that's what I think. So I reckon they might let Goldie even just take a little bit of the wear out, Nick Nat, reduce the damage there because North are favourites for this. Go figure. Um, Horn Francis will touch on as well. I thought he was exceptional. Killed the first half, had quite a lot of impact. Didn't have a heap of possessions, but again, the impact per possession looks strong enough. Hunts the ball as well. So it's not one of those ones where, and this pissed me off this week too, by the way. The amount of guys looking for free kicks and not actually going the ball, tapping it, fumbling it, bobbling around, trying to actually look for body instead of going for the ball, trying to, once they got the ball, almost like they want to get rid of it, like fall over, like, look at me, I'm getting tackled. Oh, high free kick. It's just shit. And it was so bad and it really annoyed me. And the thing to note though is that Horn Francis actually, the ball's there to be won. He goes for the ball, right? It's almost like that mentality where I'm going for the ball, you need to try and stop me. And he's just exceptional to watch. Good polish, good finish. I think the top of the draft field as well this year, like Rochelle included, I thought were just clean, polished, exceptional. So for Horn Francis, I quite like that this week against West Coast. Probably a good shake in to get on the end of a few. If everything flows, I think he'll get better as the season gets along as well. Looks like a real fast learner. So I think he's someone that you probably just have to hold on to for a bit because you know he's going to play. He'll probably get you anywhere from 60 to 110, and you just kind of got to take that a little bit, wait for him to get a couple of good games in there, and his price will, reflect that. So I think he's definitely a good get. Keen to watch him again this week. And as good as he was, is as upsetting as Ward was for Hawthorn. He's 180,000. Josh Ward. Now, this is the painful part. Number one, I think Josh Ward rolled an ankle or something or other. He was cramping as well. So apparently Mitchell said, "Hey, find some footage of this because it's quite funny." He was kind of like tripping over himself, falling over, trying to get off. Um, yeah. So again, hot weather, cramping, young player. But on the flip side, he actually did two things this game that I thought was like, wow, just exceptional, absolutely outstanding. There was one of them like contest here, and he just bang hit a handball over the top of someone and nailed a teammate on the outside. Vision was exceptional, in tight, hands under pressure, completely nailed it. And he did another one where he did something else that was just in the tight of things. You're like, holy crap, this was good. Now, I think he had a little bit more. It looked like the first half things weren't working out too well. So you had a lot of the experienced players. So I think Jaeger Mira was pretty shit. Winger did like nothing for three quarters and just came out there in the last basically to help them win them the game. Warple didn't do that much. So I think after halftime, they kind of threw Ward in the guts a little bit, and he did a couple of good things, but it seems like he was just sort of cramping up and just quite didn't handle it. So he's one that's on the chopping block for me. I would like to see him again. I think he has the potential with all the COVID going on at Hawthorn at the moment as well. You just know if like a Jaeger O'Meara or a Titch or one of those main midfielders from their team gets COVID, then we've seen already in the Amy series, Ward could go out there and go 100, 118 or whatever he got in a midfield role. So I am keen to see him for another week, but he's definitely in the chopping block because that stinker score for a guy that cost 180,000, that's going to stink up for at least a few weeks, and it's going to be hard to come back from that. So, what do you think, Swizz, with Ward?
Yeah, well, I'll work it in all those four players. So, like, anybody who's listened to me knows I haven't had Jason Horn Francis in all summer. It's all been Dacos Ward, and I wanted M7, M8, and only made that change 5 minutes before the game. And the reason for that was Pollock was out. And once Pollock was out, I was like, well, here goes Horn Francis. He's going to get up the ground now. When Pollock was in, I didn't want to bar of him because I thought, and I've said it, I don't like picking guys who are going to play small forward who are listed as a midfielder. But once Pollock was out, he actually got up the ground. He got a couple of centre bounces, changed the role again. And we know Pollock can be hit and miss with that. So I thought, no, we'll back him in. And then the decision became between Ward and Rochelle. And I went Ward as much as I was a bit worried because Phillips was listed as sub and Phillips played every game last year. I thought, well, this is a direction Sam Mitchell's going. He wants to play the kids. And there's still McGuinness and McDonald that go out before Ward. Now, as you said, it was disappointing, but hopefully either if they pick up an injury or it just gets through that first game, second game, Ward bounces back. We've already seen in the preseason he's got the ability to turn up. So I'm still going to back him in this week. And then if Rochelle, the thing with Rochelle, which I was bouncing out, and I thought Rochelle could do this against Freo, come out and kick 4 or 5 goals because that's the sort of guy he's going to be. But that's what small forwards do. They kick 4 or 5 goals one week. They don't have any impact the week after. So you're going to see the more, up and down scores where the standard deviation usually from Ward should be a bit more normal. But in saying that if Ward was to absolutely shit the bed again this week and that, well, then it becomes a no brainer. But yeah, I'm happy to back him in for now. I think he's definitely shown the ability to get the ball. And first game, like, it's some people handle it better than others and that. And it was a hot day, and there's a lot of hype going into it and stuff. So yeah, we'll see how he backs up this week.
Yep, and McDonald as well, similar sort of boat, 48 Supercoach, 117,000. Look, did enough without setting the world on light, so hopefully better after the first run, and we'll see how we go there.